So you guys have done a great job. I know this is a longer lesson as we finish up the tragedy of Julius Caesar. Now we kind of need to wrap things up. So again, our purpose is to gain different perspectives by reading across a variety of texts. We've been interpreting and analyzing the works for a variety of genres of literary, historical, and cultural significance. We talked a little bit about that. We're going to analyze the different accounts told in different mediums, the film, the script, and the article. We're going to see what was emphasized in each account. And we're also going to take a look at tragic hero and tragic flaw. Okay, so make sure that you have your study guide. We're going to go to these first three questions here right now. So what is emphasized in the movie? Well, obviously the major thing, of course, is the action, right? Lots of troop movements, lots of battle sequences. The music kind of fills in the gaps where there isn't dialogue. And again, if you were at the play, watching the play unfold on stage, there might be music. There wouldn't be nearly as many troops, certainly, and the battle sequence wouldn't be nearly as interesting or as realistic as maybe what you saw there in the film. Okay, now what is left out and why? Well, the facts are left out. Right? There were not any ditches or ramparts. Ramparts are like armaments where you'd have, lots of spears and maybe even kind of like fencing to almost build a small fort. That's what the conspirators did in reality, but that wasn't shown at all. Antony also constructed a causeway, like a bridge over the marshland. That wasn't there. The element of time isn't there. That this took place over, this was many, many months later. Okay. And so why are some of these things left out? Well, it makes it more interesting and engaging to the audience, right? It focuses on the characters and what they represent, the honor and ambition thereof. Okay. And so what are the advantages and disadvantages of these scenes of the movie as told through the play or the movie or the article? Well, the article focuses on the facts and what actually happened, but it's not as visually appealing. So the advantage of the article, you have the facts, you know exactly who's who, right? When you're watching the film, you don't always know who's who. It's certainly not as visually appealing to read just the facts. The movie allows you to see what might have actually happened, but it doesn't necessarily give the truth, right? So you get all the action, you get the different nonverbal behavior with the close-ups on the different characters, but you're not necessarily getting the truth. It didn't happen that way, okay? And the play script doesn't allow for much visualization and focuses on dialogue. The play script enables the director of a play a lot of freedom. They need to really, research and maybe watch other films or see other plays. How did this all transpire? Because it doesn't tell you that, okay? So as you take a look again, when you're looking at your study guide, you should have answered those first three questions. Okay. And I just went over that. So if you need to pause to jot that down, then please do so. All right. Scene one, as we talked about, we went over this before. You saw these lines here where Antony tells Octavius on one side, Octavius says the other side, and they of course go with Antony because Antony's older, and but it shows you that conflict. And then as we talked about, some of these lines were actually out of sequence in the film, and that might have been done because the filmmakers needed a pause in the action. Having all the action together gets to be a little overwhelming. It's important to reflect at times. And so that's what you saw. Brutus vowed to fight and not commit suicide. We mentioned that. Scene two is just that small, short little scene where Brutus orders Messala. Okay, we see that in those first few lines. And then scene three, this is where the whole theme of do not assume comes into play. Cassius assumed incorrectly. And this is where Titinius says, oh, it's Brutus's fault that we're enclosed, that he gave the word too early. And then this is where Pandarus says, oh, it looks like Titinius has been enclosed. It looks like they've got him. Now Titinius, now some light. Oh, he lights too. He's taken, meaning he's taken. But this was incorrect. And so Cassius has Pandarus kill him. And of course, the credit goes to Caesar. Caesar had us run our swords into our own bowels. So he says, Caesar, thou art revenged. And of course, this is Shakespeare, adding to this theme that if you've been killed wrongly, then you will get revenge even from the grave. That's kind of one of the themes that he's trying to tell the people here, I think. Brutus receives the information about Cassius's death, and he hails Caesar. "Oh, Julius Caesar, thou art marty yet." So again, it's called the tragedy of Julius Caesar. Shakespeare needed, if he's going to call it that, if he's going to focus on Caesar, half the script has Caesar alive, the other half has him dead. He has him kind of come back through his spirit. Scene 4, we talked about that. Brutus urges the army to fight on, and Lucilius poses as Brutus and was taken as prisoner, brought to Antony. Tells that Brutus is safe. Antony keeps him as a prisoner. It's kind of an insignificant scene. I'm kind of surprised the film kept it in there. And then the final scene, the field of battle, Brutus also he asked a couple other people, a guy by the name of Clitus and Dardanius, to kill him, but they won't. And he has Voluminus, his childhood friend. He won't do it. And that's what you see here, that Brutus actually sees his ghost. That, again, taken out of sequence in the film. They had that earlier to make it a little bit more interesting. And so he mentions that he saw it there at the fields. Voluminus won't do it. He finally gets Strato to kill him, and that's what happens. And then Antony and Octavius both come up and honor him, okay, calling him the noblest Roman of them all. So when we think about tragedy and tragic hero, of course, a tragedy is where there is something that there's an unhappy ending, right? Okay. And so that's what we have here. There's an unhappy ending. A tragic hero is somebody that is honorable, and they go from good to bad, and meaning their fortunes go from good to bad. So who's a tragic hero? And I want you to take a minute to think about that. And I also want you to think about why Octavius's words were omitted from the film. Why is Antony emphasized in the film? Okay, and so to go about both of those questions here. First of all, a tragic hero. There's a couple ways we can see this. Obviously, Caesar is a tragic hero. Okay, the people loved him. He wasn't totally evil. There was some ambition in him. And of course, his best friend kills him, stabs him in the back quite literally, and so do the other conspirators. So he's a tragic hero. But Brutus is also a tragic hero. Brutus, is honor and honor throughout. And he ends up dying at the end. He could have had Rome, right? But he allowed Antony to speak at Caesar's funeral. He should never have done that. That was one of his big tragic flaws, that Brutus was too honorable. That's his tragic flaw. That's what did him in. Caesar's tragic flaw was that maybe he was too ambitious, right? That he wanted maybe too much power. Okay. And then as we talked about here, looking at the very end, Octavius's words were omitted from the film because the filmmakers wanted to focus on Antony. He's the one that reigns, not Octavius. He's the one that everyone is connected to, not Octavius. And so that's why the film ended with Antony and not Octavius. And also, I think to emphasize the fact that they want to honor Brutus. His last words, that this was the noblest Roman of them all, that honors Brutus. It shows the honor. Okay. So to continue to go through the study guide, make sure you have these answers down. We've talked about, who's confronting each other, Antony and Octavius versus Cassius and Brutus. Antony defeats Cassius, Brutus defeats Octavius, and in the end, Antony and Octavius defeat Brutus and Cassius. Of course, by that point, Cassius had committed suicide. We talked about the mistaken assumptions that lead to Cassius's death. They're written right here. Cassius wasn't sure if Brutus's troops had been overtaken. He sent Titinius, his best friend. Titinius had not been overtaken, but it appeared that he had been. He was actually being celebrated by the troops. And so Cassius is crestfallen. He's sad. He's despondent. He commits suicide. And then Brutus, why does Brutus think he must commit suicide? Well, he saw visions of Caesar. He believes it to be more honorable to take his own life than to wait for capture. And Antony and Octavius, of course, proclaimed that Brutus had pure motives, that he was honorable. And they ordered him to be given a honorable burial. So who is a tragic hero? Well, we see Julius Caesar and Brutus. They both went from being honorable, having good fortune, to having bad fortune, right? And so that's it, guys. Okay? So make